If you were to drop an explorer into a dense, uncharted jungle, the very first thing they need to learn isn't how to find food or, like, how to build a shelter.
Right. It's usually about avoiding immediate danger.
Exactly. It's learning that the most brightly colored, beautiful, inviting tree frog sitting on a leaf is, well, it's actually the one packed with a lethal neurotoxin.
Yeah, and if you reach out and touch that frog because you don't know the local signs, you're dead.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. We are handing you, our favorite learner, a survival guide for a jungle you probably walk into every single day, and that is the American corporate office.
It really is a jungle out there, isn't it?
It totally is. And we've got our hands on an advanced English learning curriculum that is designed specifically to teach non-native speakers how to survive here. And honestly, it reveals a massive, glaring contradiction about the way business is actually done.
It's a fascinating contradiction, too, because it flies in the face of everything people just assume about American culture. I mean, globally speaking, the stereotype of an American is that they are blunt, they're loud, they are fiercely individualistic, and they say exactly what they mean.
Right, the whole cowboy mentality.
Exactly. But the reality for an international professional stepping into an American office is it's incredibly disorienting. They expect a straightforward exchange of ideas, and instead they walk into a highly encoded, deeply indirect system of communication.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it's basically passive aggressiveness elevated to an absolute art form. And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive.
It really is, because if you can't decode this secret language, if you're just taking everyone at their literal word, you are flying completely blind.
You're going to miss critical career-defining signals.
Right. Oh, absolutely. We are talking about everything from a colleague's mild frustration to an imminent serious threat to your job security. And the most dangerous part is that all of these threats are delivered right to your face, wrapped in a polite, warm smile.
Yeah, and you'll be standing there smiling right back, completely unaware that you've just been put on notice.
Yeah.
It's just terrifying.
Which brings us to the foundational layer of all this. To understand why the system even exists, we have to look at the underlying philosophy of this communication style.
Okay, lay it on me.
It's crucial to realize that this encoded language isn't inherently about being malicious or manipulative. It is entirely about a concept sociologists refer to as preserving face.
Face, like saving face, protecting your dignity.
Precisely that. But it goes beyond just protecting your own dignity. It is the absolute social currency of professional harmony.
So it's about the other person's ego, too.
Yeah, exactly. In this culture, preserving your own face, like your professional standing, and equally importantly, preserving your colleague's face, is the highest priority. The goal is to maintain a surface level of friction-free collaboration at all times.
No matter what is actually happening beneath the surface.
Right. No matter how angry or frustrated people actually are.
So the mechanism there is this forced artificial harmony. And what's wild is how this contrasts with the rest of American life. The curriculum we're looking at makes this brilliant distinction between high context and low context cultures.
Yeah, that distinction is really key here.
So high context cultures like Japan, Korea, or many Middle Eastern countries rely heavily on implicit messages. You have to read the room, understand the hierarchy, and interpret what isn't being said. But America, out in the wild, is a famously low context culture.
Very low context, very literal.
Right. If I walk into a diner in New York, the communication is incredibly low context. I say, I want a burger. The waiter says, here is your burger. But the corporate sphere operates like this bizarre anomaly. It's like a velvet glove over an iron fist. It's a micro-high context society trapped inside a low context country.
That's a great way to look at it. And what's truly jarring is how the corporate environment actively penalizes low-context communication. In the American workplace, direct confrontation is essentially a taboo.
Give me an example of how that plays out.
Well, imagine a scenario where a colleague makes a severe mistake. It costs the company money, it ruins a client relationship. If you look at that colleague and say, you did this wrong, it caused a massive problem and I am angry about it, that directness is actually deemed a failure on your part.
Wait, really? Let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this.
Yeah.
Even if they are factually the one who messed up and their mistake is undeniable, I'm the one who gets in trouble for pointing it out bluntly.
Absolutely. Even if they are entirely at fault, if you express that fact without the proper diplomatic softening, you are the one who will be labeled as emotionally unintelligent.
Wow. So I become the problem.
Yeah, you will be seen as overly aggressive, unprofessional, and lacking in collaborative skills. In many modern HR departments, your bluntness becomes a bigger issue to manage than the actual mistake you were pointing out.
It's like every conversation has a terms of service agreement attached to it in invisible ink. You are agreeing to the subtext without ever actually reading it, and the main clause is, "Thou shalt not create friction."
That is a perfect analogy.
But I have to ask, if the entire goal of this system is to avoid open confrontation and preserve harmony, doesn't this hyper-polite indirectness actually create more anxiety? Because you never know where you stand. You're constantly second-guessing every smile, every compliment, every casual email.
That is the exact psychological toll this system takes, and it's a profound one. It creates immense anxiety, imposter syndrome, and exhaustion for anyone who isn't completely fluent in it.
Because you're constantly translating in your head.
Exactly. And the mechanism that allows this anxiety to flourish is the concept of plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability. I mean, that sounds like something out of a geopolitical espionage thriller, not a Tuesday morning marketing sync.
It functions exactly the same way in the office as it does in espionage, honestly. Plausible deniability is the ability to deny any negative intent, any aggression, or any criticism because the words you used were, on a literal dictionary level, completely polite.
Ah, so you always have an out.
Right. It is the vocabulary of evasion. You create a scenario where your words say one thing, but the subtext communicates a blistering critique. And if you are ever challenged on it, like if your colleague says, "Are you insulting my work?" you can point to the literal words and say, "I have no idea what you mean. I was just offering a helpful suggestion."
So we are essentially dealing with a language where the dictionary definition of the words is completely divorced from their functional reality of the ecosystem.
That's exactly what it is.
And nowhere is this more prevalent, more documented, and more weaponized than in the inbox. Because emails give you the luxury of time, right? You don't have to react in the moment. You can sit at your keyboard, sip your coffee, and craft a trap with absolute surgical precision.
Email really is the ultimate battleground for the passive-aggressive professional. Because it removes tone of voice and body language, the written word has to carry the entire weight of the subtext.
And speaking of surgical precision, let's talk about what I can only describe as the nuclear warhead of passive-aggressive email phrases. It's 4 words long, it is legendary, and it is, "per my last email."
Oh man, just hearing those words out loud makes the temperature in the room drop.
It really does. Let's actually dissect this because there is a highly specific scenario from our source text that illustrates exactly how this attack is structured. Let's imagine a hypothetical colleague. We'll call him David.
We all know a David.
We absolutely do. So let's set the scene. On Monday morning, you send David a highly detailed, comprehensive email. You outline all the specifications for a major project deliverable. You put in the work, you formatted it with bullet points, you laid it all out perfectly.
Okay, I'm tracking.
Fast forward to Wednesday afternoon. David sends you a message, and he asks you a question that was explicitly, unambiguously answered in that email you sent him 2 days ago.
Right. So David either didn't read your Monday email, skimmed it, and didn't comprehend it, or frankly just couldn't be bothered to search his own inbox before demanding that you do the mental labor for him again.
Exactly. So you open David's email, and you are experiencing a profound, absolute testing of your patience. Your instinct is to write, "David, can you read? I literally just sent this to you. Do your job."
Which you obviously cannot do.
Right. The invisible ink terms of service dictate that you cannot say that. Instead, you construct a masterpiece of passive aggression that goes like this. "Hi, David. Hope you're having a great week. Per my last email, the specifications for the deliverable were outlined in my message on Monday. Please find the relevant details below. Happy to clarify further if needed."
It really is a breathtaking piece of linguistic architecture when you break it down.
Let's do exactly that. Let's map the anatomy of this attack piece by piece. It starts with, "Hope you're having a great week." What is functionally happening there?
That is the pleasantry buffer. It is the diplomatic shield you raise before you strike. In American corporate culture, you must establish an illusion of warmth and goodwill before delivering a correction.
So that's the plausible deniability kicking in.
Exactly. It provides that plausible deniability we talked about earlier. How could you possibly be angry or condescending? You just wish David a great week.
Then comes the dagger per my last email. This is the actual payload. This is the polite HR-approved translation of, "I am dealing with profound frustration because of your incompetence."
And pay close attention to the structural move that follows the dagger, the part where you say, "Please find the relevant details below."
The forced homework.
Exactly. You are copy-pasting the information from Monday into the new email. You are doing David's homework for him, but by explicitly stating that you are pasting the details below, you are spotlighting his laziness.
It's like you're rubbing his nose in it.
Yeah, you are creating a visual, undeniable record of the fact that you have to spoon-feed him information he already possessed. You aren't just answering his question, you are making a point about his workflow.
And it ends with the ultimate flourish of faux generosity, happy to clarify further if needed. On paper, if you show that to an alien visiting Earth, it sounds so collaborative, like, I'm here to help, David.
But we know that's not what it means.
Right. The true subtext, the silent scream echoing beneath that sentence is, I cannot believe you need this clarified. I was extraordinarily clear the first time, and if you ask me another question about this, I might actually lose my mind.
It's a masterclass in controlled fury. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at what happens when per my last email fails to correct David's behavior. If David keeps messing up, the language escalates. It shifts from the frustration of per my last email to something far more severe, as previously discussed.
Oh man, that phrasing immediately feels heavier. It's intensely formal.
It is intensely formal by design. When you see, as previously discussed, or as per our conversation on Tuesday, you are no longer just dealing with a frustrated colleague trying to get you to read an email. You are witnessing the real-time construction of a paper trail.
A paper trail, meaning creating documented, timeline-stamped evidence.
Yes. In the American corporate ecosystem, email is not merely a communication tool for chatting. It is an administrative, historical, and potentially legal archive.
Wow, okay. That raises the stakes.
It does. When someone uses, as previously discussed, they are consciously dedonkuing events. They are putting a flag in the ground and saying, I am putting this on the official record, I have communicated this clearly, here is the date it happened, and I am establishing a timeline.
Let me push back on this for a second, though, because I'm putting myself in the shoes of our listener. I use, as previously discussed, all the time, and I swear I use it innocently.
You think it's innocent?
I do. Sometimes I just want to remind someone, or even remind myself, of what we agreed on in a hallway chat, with zero malicious intent or defensive strategy. Am I accidentally threatening my team? Is it always a trap?
That's a vital distinction to make. Can it be innocent? In a vacuum, absolutely. You might just be highly organized. But the workplace is not a vacuum. It is a shared psychological space.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because this phrase is predominantly utilized as a defensive mechanism by the culture at large, it carries heavy, heavy baggage. Even if your intent is innocent organization, the impact and the perception of that phrase will almost always trigger a defensive response. When your colleague reads, as previously discussed, their radar is going to ping. They're going to assume you are building a case against them.
That makes so much sense. It's performative documentation.
Exactly. It's anticipatory blame shifting. In high-stakes environments, people are constantly anticipating that a project might fail or that David might drop the ball entirely.
Right. Someone has to take the fall.
By using this formal phrasing, they are ensuring that when the post-mortem meeting happens, when the executives are asking why the project crashed, there is immutable written proof that the failure was David's fault, not theirs. You are writing the email not just for the recipient, but for the invisible jury.
The invisible jury. The manager, or HR, who might audit your inbox 3 months from now. That is chilling. You are constantly communicating with an audience that isn't even in the room yet.
It's a very guarded way to live.
It is. Okay, so that is the written word. Emails give you the cover of a screen. But what terrifies me is when this happens in real time. You're in a room, there's an audience, and you have to decode these attacks instantly without the luxury of staring at a draft. Let's transition from the inbox to the boardroom and look at the art of polite euthanasia in meetings.
Meetings are the public theater of the corporate world, and because there is an audience, your peers, your subordinates, your superiors, the requirement to preserve face is magnified tenfold.
Because the embarrassment is public.
Yes, you absolutely cannot publicly shame someone in an American meeting without doing massive collateral damage to your own reputation.
And because you can't say, that's a terrible idea, we get introduced to the undisputed champion of meeting passive-aggressiveness, the absolute kiss of death for any proposal. And it's this phrase right here that's a really interesting idea.
To the untrained ear, it sounds incredibly positive.
Right. If I tell you a story at a dinner party and you say, wow, that's a really interesting idea, I feel validated. I feel heard. But in this context, the word interesting is doing some incredibly heavy lifting.
It really is. If you truly analyze the functional use of the word interesting in corporate meeting, It's essentially the Switzerland of adjectives.
The Switzerland of adjectives. I love that.
It is perfectly, flawlessly neutral. It is non-committal and diplomatically evasive. It carries the acoustic shape of a compliment. It sounds like you are intellectually engaging with the speaker, but it commits you to absolutely no nothing.
No, it's basically a placeholder.
It doesn't mean the idea is good. It doesn't mean it's actionable. And it certainly doesn't mean it's approved.
Let's walk through a public execution scenario from the curriculum to really cement this. Imagine a character named Sarah. Sarah is a mid-level employee, and she's in a big cross-functional team meeting. She has spent all weekend developing a brand new marketing strategy. She stands up, she presents it with passion, she puts her heart into it.
Okay, setting the stage.
The room goes quiet. The manager listens, nods slowly, and delivers this exact sequence. That's a really interesting approach, Sarah. I appreciate you thinking outside the box on this one. Let's maybe table that for now and circle back to it later.
It is a flawless execution, not a drop of blood on the floor.
Not a drop. Let's decode this phrase by phrase, starting with this setup. Appreciate you thinking outside the box. What is the manager actually accomplishing there?
The manager is acknowledging the effort solely to avoid looking like a tyrant in front of the rest of the team. By praising her outside the box thinking, the manager is giving Sarah a gold star for participation.
A gold star, yeah.
It softens the blow, preserves Sarah's face slightly, and makes the manager look supportive and encouraging. But notice that the praise is about her effort, not the viability of the actual idea.
It's completely hollow. Because immediately after the gold star comes the rejection. Let's table that for now.
This is a classic misdirection. In formal parliamentary procedure, like in a government legislature, tabling something means you are literally putting it on the table to discuss it. But in American corporate speak, tabling an idea means putting it away in a dark drawer.
Right, locking it away.
It means we are absolutely not doing this right now, and probably not ever.
And the final nail in the coffin seals it. Circle back to it later. The translation here is brutal. It means there is no later. It's an illusion of future consideration designed entirely to get Sarah to stop talking about it in the present moment without having to say the word no.
It's a deferral tactic. You promise a future discussion that you have zero intention of ever scheduling.
It really is like politely euthanizing an idea, isn't it? Giving it a dignified burial with full military honors in front of the team. Here lies Sarah's marketing strategy. It thought outside the box.
That's exactly what it is.
But the extreme danger here for you, the listener, is the psychological aftermath. Because if you are Sarah and you are operating on a low-context dictionary definition of English, you walk out of that meeting feeling amazing. You think, wow, my manager called my idea interesting. My creativity was appreciated. We're going to circle back to this.
And you have no idea.
You are completely blissfully unaware that your idea was just shot in the head in front of 12 people.
And this leads to immense confusion and frustration weeks later. Sarah will inevitably bring up her strategy again in a future meeting saying, hey, I wanted to circle back on my idea. And everyone in the room will look at her like she has two heads because they all implicitly understood the idea was dead the second the manager deployed the word interesting.
The social agility required to navigate that without losing your mind is staggering. And there's another brilliant meeting maneuver that works in tandem with this. Criticism disguised as optimism. And it hinges on the phrase going forward.
This is a fantastic example of preserving face while instituting discipline. Going forward functions as a temporal reset button for a team.
Give me a scenario. How does this actually play out?
Imagine a project that was a complete disaster. Let's say a guy named Jim completely failed to communicate a key deliverable to a major client, and the client called the CEO furious. Now you're in the post-mortem meeting.
Everyone is tense.
Very tense. The manager cannot publicly say, Jim ruined the client relationship and cost us $50,000. That violates the harmony protocol. Instead, the manager will look at the room and say, going forward, let's make sure we implement a new client touchpoint protocol for all accounts, requiring weekly updates.
Ah, so it serves a dual purpose.
Precisely. First, it addresses the massive failure without ever dwelling on the past. It identifies the gap, which is client communication. But secondly, and most importantly, it establishes a new policy as if it's just an objective, neutral, operational improvement.
And Jim gets to sit there and nod along like it wasn't his fault.
Exactly. It allows Jim to save face. He isn't being publicly reprimanded or shamed. He is just absorbing the correction as part of a collective new team policy. Everyone in the room knows Jim caused this rule to exist, but the language allows everyone to pretend it's just a proactive business strategy.
Criticism disguised as optimism. It's kind of beautiful in an incredibly twisted way. But as treacherous as these public meetings are, the reality is that the real danger often lurks when the audience is removed entirely. The rules change when the door clicks shut. Which brings us to the chilling reality of private, one-on-one communication and the weaponization of the word just.
When you remove the public audience, the requirement to preserve face shifts. You no longer have to perform for the crowd, which means the warnings become much more acute, even if the language remains superficially polite.
There is a specific phrase from the curriculum that is notoriously used in these private one-on-one ambushes. It's a phrase that, on its face, sounds lovely. It sounds like teamwork and synergy. The phrase is, I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
And this is where context becomes absolute king. The words themselves are a blank slate. They rely entirely on tone, body language, and setting to derive their true, terrifying meaning.
Right, because if a colleague stops by my desk with a cup of coffee, leans casually against my cubicle, and says, hey, just want to make sure we're on the same page about the slide deck for tomorrow, that's completely benign. It's just a collaborative check-in.
Exactly. It's routine alignment. But if we change the context, if your manager sends you a calendar invite out of the blue, if you walk into their office and they physically close the door behind you.
Okay, my heart is beating faster just hearing that.
Right. If they sit down, look you in the eye with a serious, flat tone and say, I just want to make sure we're on the same page. That is no longer a check-in. That is a siren going off. It is an early warning signal of impending doom.
Let's get very explicit about what that doom looks like in corporate America, because it revolves around a massive, terrifying piece of HR jargon. The PIP, the Performance Improvement Plan.
The PIP is a concept that every professional needs to understand intimately. On paper, formally, a performance improvement plan is presented as a supportive, structured opportunity for an underperforming employee to get back on track.
That's the fairy tale version.
That is the HR fairy tale. The functional reality in the vast majority of American corporations is that a PIP is a highly documented 30 to 90-day legal off-ramp to termination. It is an administrative process mandated by corporate lawyers.
See, really? So it's not about improving at all?
The goal of a PIP is to create an undeniable paper trail proving that the company gave you clear metrics, warned you about your failures, and gave you a chance to improve.
So that when they inevitably fire you at the end of the 90 days, you can't sue them for wrongful termination?
Precisely. It protects the company from litigation. Now, bringing this back to our phrase, when a manager closes the door and says, I want to make sure we're on the same page, they're almost always giving you your unwritten, final verbal warning before that formal PIP process begins.
That is so intense.
They are communicating, you are failing. Fix it this week, or the next conversation we have will be with human resources present.
And again, the danger of not having the decoder ring is catastrophic here. If you aren't fluent in the subtext, you might leave that closed-door meeting thinking, what a proactive manager. They really care about making sure we are aligned on our goals. Meanwhile, your manager is literally opening a Word document to draft your termination timeline.
It's the ultimate disconnect.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the grammatical mechanics of this phrase, because this is where the linguistic manipulation gets really insidious. I just want to make sure. I want to zero in on the word just, because it acts as a very specific type of tool. A minimizer.
The weaponized just. It is arguably the most dangerous adverb in the corporate dictionary.
How does a simple four-letter word like just become a weapon?
It becomes a weapon because it intentionally shrinks the perceived magnitude of what is being said. It's a linguistic sleight of hand. Think about how we use it casually. By saying, I just have a quick question, you are minimizing the disruption you are causing to someone's day.
Right, making it sound small.
By saying, I just want to make sure we're on the same page, the manager is taking a massive career-threatening warning and shrinking it down to sound like a tiny, insignificant administrative detail.
So it lowers the recipient's defenses. It tricks your brain into thinking the threat level is low.
Exactly. And it's used extensively in peer-to-peer conflict as well. There's a classic scenario in the curriculum that illustrates how this hedging, minimizing language is used as a performative power move. Picture a high-stakes meeting between two rival departments, say, the operations team and the finance team.
Oh, a tale as old as time. Operations versus finance.
Right. And someone from the operations team speaks up during finance's presentation and says, just to clarify, I think there might be a few items wrong with these budget projections.
Okay, let's analyze that phrasing. I think there might be. In linguistics, that's called tentative or hedging language.
Hmm.
And in many other cultures around the world, if you say, I think there might be an error, it signifies actual, genuine uncertainty. It means you aren't sure, you don't have all the facts, and you are tentatively proposing a possibility for the group to consider. But in this environment,
In the American corporate environment, that phrasing is a devastatingly performative power move. When the operations colleague says, I think there might be a few items wrong, they are not uncertain. They are not guessing.
they know exactly what's wrong.
They're holding the spreadsheets, they have done the math, they have the receipts, and they know exactly what is wrong, down to the final decimal point.
So why play dumb? If you have the proof that finance messed up the budget, why hedge? Why not just say, the budget is incorrect, here's the proof?
Because if they stand up and bluntly say, finance is wrong, they violate the social contract. They embarrass the finance director publicly. They cause a massive loss of face, and suddenly operations looks like the aggressor.
Ah, so they become the bad guy.
By using the weaponized, just to clarify, and tentative hedge, I think there might be, they maintain the illusion of absolute humility and collaboration. They look like a team player simply asking a gentle question. But underneath that humility, they are systematically dismantling the other department's work.
It is an act of total dominance disguised as a helpful, gentle inquiry. You hold the lethal evidence, but you play humble to maintain the illusion of collaboration. It's brilliant, but honestly, it sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. And that brings us to the psychological toll of all this ambiguity and how the language shifts when things rapidly escalate.
Let's talk about ambiguity, because if there's one phrase that embodies the terror of the unknown in the workplace, it's what I like to call the Schrodinger's cat of office communication. It is the 5 most anxiety-inducing words you can possibly hear from a superior duration. Do you have a minute?
It is the ultimate void. And the psychology of the void is fascinating. When you hear the phrase, do you have a minute, usually send via a direct message on Slack or Teams, it provides zero contextual information.
None at all.
It lacks a subject. It lacks an urgency level. It completely lacks an emotional tone.
And when the human brain is faced with an informational void in a high-stakes environment like the workplace, it does not fill that void with positive assumptions. You don't get a message saying, do you have a minute, and think, oh boy, they're going to promote me.
Right. No one ever thinks that.
You fill it with the absolute worst-case scenario, instant catastrophizing. You hear those words, and your heart rate spikes. You immediately think, layoffs. I'm being fired. The project is dead. I made a catastrophic mistake, and I'm in trouble.
The neutrality is the weapon. In many cultures, a boss asking to speak with you is routine and unremarkable. But American office culture relies incredibly heavily on scheduled meetings, bulleted agendas, and asynchronous communication. Everything is planned.
So when it's not planned, it's a big deal.
Therefore, an unscheduled, impromptu request for time, especially if it involves stepping into a private room or jumping on an unscheduled Zoom call, carries immense implicit weight. The lack of context forces the recipient into a state of hypervigilance and panic before the conversation even begins.
It destabilizes you. You walk into that meeting already on the defensive. Now, do you have a minute as a psychological weapon, there's another phrase that represents the administrative nuclear option. This is the ultimate escalation in email warfare. The phrase is, I CC'd someone senior for visibility.
Ah, the CC escalation. When someone brings a manager, a director, or a VP into an ongoing, contentious email thread for visibility, the translation is brutal and immediate.
Let's strip away the corporate varnish. What are they actually saying when they type that?
They are saying, I have experienced a total loss of trust in your ability or willingness to handle this matter. You are failing to do what I want. Therefore, I am calling in reinforcements. I am demanding accountability, and I am ensuring that someone with the power to fire you or someone who dictates your performance review is now actively observing your failure.
It's essentially pulling the fire alarm. And using the phrase for visibility makes it sound so innocent, like, oh, I just want to keep the VP in the loop, just making sure everyone has visibility. No, you aren't providing visibility. You're bringing the executioner into the room to watch me work.
Exactly. It's a highly hostile act, wrapped in completely sterile bureaucratic terminology.
It's warfare by syntax. Let me actually test you on some of this. Let's do a little rapid-fire decoding. I'll throw out a few phrases that I hear all the time, and you give me the unvarnished, true meaning based on the underlying mechanics of this culture. Ready?
Bring them on. Let's translate.
Okay, here's one. You're pitching an idea, and a senior colleague sighs and says, I'm not sure that's the best use of our time. What are they actually telling me?
Translation, you are a time waster. What you are currently talking about or proposing is entirely irrelevant, useless, or poorly thought out. I am formally redirecting this conversation before you waste another second of my life, but I am doing it in a way that makes it sound like a mutual realization.
Ouch. Okay, how about this one? A meeting is getting slightly heated, two people are going back and forth, and a manager steps in and says, let's take this offline.
Translation, we are currently having a contentious argument, or worse, we are getting into the weeds of a deeply embarrassing operational failure in front of an audience. We are going to stop speaking immediately to hide this disagreement from witnesses. We will fight about this in private where HR can't hear us.
Hide the bodies. I love that. Okay, here is a classic. Someone starts a sentence with all due respect.
Translation, this is a request for diplomatic immunity before I say something completely disrespectful. I'm about to insult your intelligence, your idea, or your entire strategy, but deploying this phrase theoretically protects me from being labeled as unprofessional. I am paying lip service to respect before I eviscerate your point.
It's the no offense, but of the corporate world. Okay, what if I'm assigned to a project and the person who was supposed to be co-leading it with me suddenly says, you know what, I'll defer to your expertise on this?
Translation, this idea is going to fail. I know it's going to fail. I can see the iceberg, and I am explicitly distancing myself from this impending disaster so that when the postmortem happens, the blame falls squarely and solely on your shoulders. You are the expert, therefore the failure is yours. Good luck.
That is corporate self-preservation at its absolute finest. Jumping off the sinking ship and handing you the captain's hat. All right, two more. A colleague smiles at me and says, correct me if I'm wrong, but...
Translation, I am absolutely not wrong. I have undisputed evidence that I am right. But I am pretending to be humble while I publicly prove that you are the one who is wrong. It's a trap designed to make you agree with your own defeat.
And the final one. An email starts with, as I'm sure you're already aware.
Translation, I am highly confident that you do not know this information, and the fact that you don't know it is a serious problem. But to prevent you from losing face and throwing a tantrum, I am going to graciously pretend that you are a fully informed professional while I aggressively educate you on the very thing you should have already known.
That is brutal. So what does this all mean? We have spent all this time mapping the jungle. We've shown the traps, the digital daggers, the smiling assassins. We understand the sociological need to save face.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. But you, our listener, are a professional. You have to wake up tomorrow, log on to Slack, walk into these meetings, and actually survive in this environment. So let's shift our focus to the playbook. How do you respond when you are targeted by these phrases?
This is where we move from theory to application. The most crucial thing to understand is that you cannot fight passive aggressiveness with direct aggressiveness. You will lose. But there are highly effective defensive maneuvers you can employ.
Let's walk through them. Let's start with a strategy I'll call direct clarification.
Direct clarification is essentially calling the bluff, but doing it with impeccable weaponized politeness. Remember, passive aggressiveness relies on shadows. It thrives on ambiguity and unsaid threats. Your counter move is to flood that ambiguity with light.
Okay, let's role play this so the listener can really feel the mechanics of it. I'll be the passive-aggressive manager. I call you into my office, shut the door, and say, listen, I just want to make sure we're on the same page about your output lately. How do you use direct clarification against me?
I don't get defensive. I don't shrink. I sit up straight, match your professional tone, and respond with enthusiastic curiosity. I say, absolutely, I want to make sure we are perfectly aligned as well. Could you outline the highly specific metrics or recent deliverables where you feel we are out of sync so I can calibrate immediately?
Oh, that's brilliant. It's like linguistic judo.
Yeah.
You take my momentum, my stated desire to be on the same page, and you force me to actually define what the page is. I can't hide behind the vague threat of your output anymore. I have to articulate the actual concrete problem, which brings the conflict out of the shadows and into a space where we can actually solve it factually.
You strip away the deniability by forcing them to be literal. Now, let's look at another strategy specifically for email warfare. We'll call this the professional mirror. This is how you handle those per my last email attacks that question your competence.
How does the professional mirror work? Do I just type per my last email right back at them? Enter a passive-aggressive spiral.
No, you never escalate. A race to the bottom only creates a paper trail of two unprofessional people. You match their professional tone, but you neutralize the aggression through extreme radical ownership. If someone attacks your competence by highlighting a mistake or a missed deadline via "per my last email," your response must be an impenetrable fortress of competence.
Give you the formula.
You acknowledge the issue without a single ounce of defensiveness. You provide a clear, factual explanation, meaning facts, not emotional excuses. And crucially, you implement and communicate a forward-looking solution.
So instead of saying, "I didn't see your email because I was busy," I would say, "You are correct. The deadline was missed due to a data rendering error on my end. I have fixed the rendering issue, the completed deliverable is attached here, and I have implemented a new verification protocol so this data error never occurs again."
Precisely. Think about what happens to the attacker in that scenario. They threw a dagger and it hit a concrete wall. You neutralize the attack by being so transparently competent that their passive aggression has nothing left to latch onto.
That's empowering.
It is. You drain the power from their attack by solving the problem completely and removing their ability to play the victim.
Which brings us to a third defensive maneuver, the classic rise above.
Also known as kill them with kindness. This is particularly vital when dealing with the nuclear option, when someone CCs a boss to attack you for visibility.
Right. Because the human instinct, when your boss gets CC'd on an email, highlighting your mistake is sheer panic. You feel publicly shamed. Your blood pressure spikes. Your immediate instinct is to get defensive, explain why it wasn't your fault, and maybe even CC their boss in retaliation.
And that instinct is exactly what the offender is banking on. When they escalate by bringing in an audience, they are hoping you will look flustered, defensive, or incompetent in front of leadership. The rise above strategy dictates you do the exact opposite.
Walk me through the psychological shift required to execute this.
You have to detach your ego from the email. When you reply, you respond with total grace, extraordinary thoroughness, and absolute professionalism. You treat the CC'd boss as a welcome guest to a master class in how well you do your job. You say, "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Here's the comprehensive breakdown of the timeline. Here are the steps taken, and here's the immediate resolution."
And what does that accomplish?
It completely flips the dynamic. The senior observer, the boss who was CC'd, looks at the thread. They don't see you failing. They see the attacker looking petty, emotional, and vindictive, while they see you operating as a level-headed, high-performing professional who handles crisis with grace. You win the exchange not by fighting back, but by refusing to engage in the mudslinging. You make the attacker look small.
Okay, so these are incredibly powerful defensive maneuvers. But this brings up a massive, fundamental question for you, the listener. If this is how the game is played, if this is the reality of the American corporate matrix, should our listener actually start using these phrases offensively? Should they pick up the digital dagger and start typing as previously discussed and weaponizing the word just?
That is the ethical tightrope of this entire discussion. The answer is nuanced, but practically speaking, selectively yes.
Really? Even though we've spent this entire deep dive dissecting how toxic and anxiety-inducing it is, you're advising them to join the system.
Because it is ultimately a matter of survival and achieving what we call cultural fluency. If you operate in a high-level American workplace and you absolutely refuse to use diplomatic softening language, if you insist on brutal, low-context, literal directness on principle, you will not survive. You will be labeled as abrasive. You will be alienated from your team. HR will view you as a liability. To achieve true fluency and effectiveness, you must learn to calibrate.
To calibrate is to survive. You have to speak the language of the locals.
Exactly. Let's go back to our colleague with the error-filled report. If their report is full of mistakes, you cannot simply say, "Your report has errors, fix it." Even if it's true, that is professional suicide in this culture. You must learn to calibrate your language. You say, "I noticed a few areas that might benefit from a second look."
Same message, different wrapper.
You achieve the exact same operational goal. The errors get fixed, but you preserve their dignity. You maintain the harmony.
It's the difference between wielding a broadsword recklessly in a crowded room and being a master fencer. You have to know the forms. You have to know how to parry, how to thrust, and how to disengage gracefully.
And knowing the forms allows you to protect yourself. You can't dismantle a system you don't understand. Once you achieve fluency, once you have the standing and the respect of your peers, then you might be in a position to advocate for more transparent, low-context communication within your own specific team. But you have to earn that capital first by proving you can play the game.
Incredible. We have mapped the jungle. We have decoded the matrix. We've gone from the macro sociology of saving face down to the micromechanics of a forward email. But before we let you go, we want to give you a playbook to take this out into the real world. Here is your listener homework. 3 actionable steps to master this hidden language. Step 1, audit your recent work emails.
That's a great exercise.
Go back through your sent and received folders from the last month. Look for the pleasantry buffers, the weaponized jests, the plausible deniability. Find 3 examples of hidden subtext that you might have missed when you first read them. Train your eye to see the matrix.
Step 2, practice writing constructive feedback using diplomatic, softening language. Take a blunt, low-context criticism that you want to deliver and practice wrapping it in the velvet glove. Practice writing. I think there might be an opportunity to optimize this workflow. Instead of writing, your workflow is inefficient. Build that muscle memory.
And step 3, build a personal glossary. Create your own unwritten corporate dictionary. Every time you are in a meeting or reading a thread and you encounter a phrase that makes your radar ping, a phrase that feels heavier than its literal words, write it down, decode it. What was the context? What was the outcome? Keep it in your arsenal. Because knowledge and the ability to accurately interpret your environment is the only armor that truly works here.
And as you build that glossary and continue to navigate your career, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've talked extensively about why this encoded language exists: to preserve face, to protect egos, to maintain an illusion of harmony. But consider the macro-level impact on an organization as a whole. What happens to a workplace's ultimate efficiency, its capacity for innovation, and its true psychological safety when half the team is operating with a standard dictionary and the other half is operating with this unwritten, highly encoded corporate cipher?
That is a massive structural disconnect. You have people literally speaking 2 different functional languages.
Exactly. So the question is the immense amount of human energy spent constantly translating, hedging, softening, and second-guessing language actually protecting our professional harmony? Or is this elaborate system of polite evasion secretly the single biggest drain on our collective mental bandwidth? Are we sacrificing clarity, speed, and true innovation on the altar of plausible deniability?
Wow. Are we saving face, or are we just losing our minds? Are we so busy softening the blow that we forget how to actually build things together? That is a profound question to walk away with, and one you'll probably think about during your next team sync. Well, to you, our favorite explorer, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us. You've braved the jungle, you studied the beautiful venomous tree frogs, and you have survived. You now possess the decoder ring to see the matrix of office communication for what it truly is. Be safe out there, watch out for the interesting ideas, and we'll catch you on the next deep dives.
You know, driving a car is, mechanically speaking, it's the same almost everywhere in the world.
Right.
You have a steering wheel, you have a gas pedal that makes you go, and a brake pedal that makes you stop.
Exactly.
You sit in the seat, you look out the windshield. It is just this universal physical operation.
The basic mechanics absolutely do not change. I mean, a car in Tokyo operates on the exact same principles as a car in London or Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You put the key in or push the button, and the machinery responds.
Right. But I want you to imagine trying to drive in a foreign country where you know exactly how to operate the physical machinery of the car, but you have absolutely no idea what the local road signs mean.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a nightmare.
Right. Like a red octagon doesn't mean stop, it means speed up.
Wow.
Or a yield sign is actually a pedestrian crosswalk. Or a solid double yellow line means feel free to pass.
That is just chaos.
It's total chaos. You could be an incredibly skilled driver, following all the physical rules of operating the vehicle flawlessly, but culturally, you would be an absolute menace on the road.
Yeah, you'd be causing accidents left and right.
Exactly. And sending an email in the American professional workplace without understanding the underlying cultural mechanics is, well, it's exactly like trying to drive in that foreign country.
It really is.
You might know how to type, you know how to hit send, but if you have no idea what the road signs mean, you are going to crash.
It is a terrifying analogy, but an incredibly accurate one. I mean, you might have perfect grammar, you might have an expansive vocabulary, but if you do not understand the unwritten rules of the road, the people around you are going to perceive you as reckless or aggressive, just
completely oblivious.
Exactly, completely oblivious.
And that is exactly what we're getting into today.
Oh.
Welcome to a deep dive into an aspect of modern life that is so ubiquitous, it is practically invisible.
Yeah, it really is.
We all do it every single day, yet it is so fraught with unwritten rules and psychological landmines and hidden tripwires that it can literally make or break a career.
Without a doubt.
We are talking about the cultural mechanics of American professional email etiquette.
It's the water we swim in. We spend hours a day in our inboxes, but very few of us actually stop to examine the chemical makeup of that water.
Right.
We just paddle as hard as we can, hope we don't drown.
So today we are taking a comprehensive guide, this massive, incredibly detailed resource that was originally designed to teach advanced, highly nuanced cultural mechanics to international professionals operating in English, and we are going to extract the ultimate playbook from it.
I love that.
We are looking at the cultural mechanics of the inbox. And our mission for you today, listening right now, is to shortcut your path to becoming a highly sophisticated communicator.
Yeah, because you want to be the person who gets it right.
We want you to be the person who never accidentally sabotages their own reputation with, like, a misplaced comma, or a culturally tone-deaf greeting, or a passive-aggressive CC field.
But before we get into the tactical playbook, we really need to establish why this matters to you right now.
Yeah.
Because there is a very pervasive, almost trendy narrative out there that email is a dinosaur. That it's dead.
Right. I hear this all the time. People say, oh, we don't really do email anymore. We just use Slack.
Or we live in Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, exactly. Or they use WhatsApp or whatever instant messaging platform their startup prefers. They treat email like it's a fax machine.
Yeah, like something that only exists for sending calendar invites or, dealing with the HR department.
Ah, totally.
And that is an incredibly dangerous misconception to hold. Despite the massive rise of instant messaging platforms, email remains the undisputed official record of the American workplace.
The paper trail.
It is the permanent paper trail. I mean, Slack is for quick questions. Slack is for, are we still on for 2? Or can you send me that link? Email, on the other hand, is where the actual architecture of business is built. It is where job offers are extended, where legal boundaries are firmly drawn, where major deals are closed, and where professional expectations are permanently set.
Okay, so let's unpack this central conflict. Because the source material points out something fundamental about human communication, that email completely short circuits.
It really does.
Face-to-face communication relies heavily on tone of voice, on micro-expressions, on body language.
Yeah.
If we are in a meeting and I say something a little blunt to you, I can soften it with a smile or a warm tone or, a self-deprecating laugh.
You have a whole arsenal of biological tools to convey intent.
Exactly. But email strips all of that biological context away. You're left with nothing but black text on a bright white screen.
And those words aren't just read, they are heavily, heavily judged through a very specific cultural lens.
Which is terrifying.
It is. The term we really need to focus on here is the emotional register. Because you lack vocal warmth, a perfectly neutral sentence on a screen can easily be read as aggressive. Right.
And here is the truly insidious part. The recipient will almost never reply and tell you that you've offended them.
No, of course not. They won't say, ouch, that hurt my feelings.
Right. They will simply form a quiet, persistent impression of you. If you get the cultural mechanics wrong, you might come across as too cold, too demanding, or, on the flip side, too submissive and desperate.
Wow.
And that silent impression will color every single interaction you have with them moving forward, whether you are trying to get a budget approved or asking for a promotion.
That is genuinely high stakes. I mean, it makes me want to unplug my router and never send an email again.
I know the feeling.
But since we don't have that luxury, let's start at the absolute beginning of the process. Because before we even worry about the words in the body of the email or our emotional register, we have to actually convince the recipient to open the message.
Yes.
We have to face the gatekeepers of the inbox.
The subject line. It is the most critical piece of real estate in your entire communication strategy. Let's look at the reality of the inbox, because the statistics in our notes are staggering. The average American professional's inbox is essentially an active war zone.
War zone is the right word.
We are talking about 50 to 200 unread emails sitting there at any given moment. They're being bombarded by internal newsletters, client requests, automated software updates, and project threads.
It never stops.
Your single email is competing with all of that visual noise. And according to the data, your subject line has exactly 2 to 3 seconds to win the recipient's attention.
2 to 3 seconds. Just think about that.
It has nothing.
When you are scrolling through your phone on a train or rapidly clicking through Outlook between meetings, your brain is performing ruthless micro-calculations.
Like what?
Like, do I need to read this? Do I need to care about this? Can I delete this? That is the entire window you have to justify your existence in their inbox.
So given that microscopic window, What are the worst offenders?
Yeah.
What are the things people do that guarantee their email gets ignored or resented?
The absolute worst things you can put in a subject line are vague, low-effort phrases. Things like, hi, or quick question, or following up.
Or the ultimate sin, a completely blank subject line.
Exactly. A blank subject line is an administrative trap. When you send a blank subject line, you are essentially signaling to the recipient, my time is more valuable than yours.
Right.
I couldn't be bothered to spend 5 seconds summarizing this, so you have to stop what you're doing, open the email, and read the whole thing just to figure out what it is. It is deeply disrespectful of their time.
But let me push back on this for a second.
Okay.
Because when I was reviewing the material, I found myself wondering, is a completely blank subject line genuinely the worst offense? Or is a highly misleading one worse?
That's a great question.
Think about it like a movie trailer. If I see a movie trailer that is just a black screen with the title, it's vague, sure. I don't know the genre. But if the trailer promises me a lighthearted comedy, and I buy a ticket, and it turns out to be a gruesome horror movie, I'm going to be furious.
Yeah.
Isn't a misleading subject line worse than a blank one?
That is a fascinating way to frame it. The movie trailer analogy is perfect. A blank subject line is bad because it forces the recipient to do the uncompensated labor of figuring out the genre of your email.
Yeah.
It creates friction. A misleading subject line, on the other hand, is a breach of trust.
Exactly.
If you write lunch tomorrow in the subject line, and the body of the email is actually a 500-word critique of a major project failure, you have ambushed them. You tricked them into opening it under false pretenses.
Which is just awful.
Both are terrible, but what the guide emphasizes is that the ultimate solution to both of these traps is radical, unyielding specificity.
Radical specificity. Let's look at the concrete examples provided in the text to see what that actually looks like. The weak version they provide is someone just writing the word meeting.
Which tells the recipient absolutely nothing. It forces them to ask a dozen internal questions.
Like which meeting?
Exactly. Which meeting? Is it a past meeting or a future meeting? Am I invited to this meeting? Did I miss it? Is it canceled?
Right. It creates instant anxiety. Then the guide offers the highly effective version of that same email. Q3 marketing review meeting rescheduled to Thursday, 3 p.m.
And this is where we need to introduce a critical psychological concept: cognitive load.
Cognitive load.
Yes. Cognitive load refers to the total amount of mental effort that is being used in your working memory at any given moment. When an American professional is scanning through 120 emails a day, their cognitive load is maxed out. They are constantly triaging.
Triaging.
Yeah.
Like a battlefield medic in an emergency room.
Exactly like that.
You have to look at 50 patients and instantly decide who needs a surgeon right this second, who can wait an hour, and who just needs a bandage and an aspirin.
Precisely. You're forcing them to perform mental triage. And this is where the guide introduces a tactical maneuver that I think is just phenomenally effective: bracketed tags.
I found this concept fascinating. This is when you put specific words in square brackets right at the absolute front of the subject line.
Yes.
So before any other text, you see bracket action required, close bracket, or FYI, or decision needed, or urgent.
Yes. But let's explore why these work so incredibly well culturally. Because on the surface, they just look like a neat organizational tool.
Right, like a filing system.
But fundamentally, these tags are profound acts of professional empathy.
Wait, empathy. That seems like a very warm human word to apply to a cold corporate email tag like action required.
I know it sounds strange.
Because if a junior employee sends an email to a vice president with action required in brackets, doesn't that come off as incredibly bossy? Doesn't it sound like a dictator barking orders?
It might feel that way if you aren't used to the culture, but in the context of the American corporate inbox, it is the exact opposite. It is empathy because you are actively anticipating and alleviating the stress of the recipient.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about the triage medic. By putting FYI in the subject line, you are instantly lowering the recipient's blood pressure. You are telling them, you don't need to take any action on this, you don't need to reply, just read it when you have a spare moment. You are giving them a mental break.
Okay, I see that for FYI.
But even with action required, you are helping them prioritize. You are reducing their cognitive load by doing the triage for them.
Oh, right.
You're saying, I know you have 50 emails, but this one actually needs your brain power today. In a business culture that values efficiency and time above almost all else, saving someone mental energy is the highest form of respect you can offer. It's not bossy, it's clarity. And clarity is kindness.
That makes a lot of sense when you frame it around cognitive load. It's like putting up bright, highly visible road signs so the other driver doesn't have to guess if there's a cliff ahead.
Exactly.
They know exactly how to maneuver. But speaking of keeping things clear, there is a very strict rule the guide mentions about thread continuity that we need to cover.
Ah, yes. The absolute prohibition against changing a subject line mid-conversation unless the topic has genuinely fundamentally changed.
I see this happen all the time, and it drives me crazy.
Oh, it's the worst.
We will be in a back-and-forth email chain about, say, the Q3 marketing budget. We've replied 4 times, and suddenly someone replies to that same chain, but they change the subject line to next week's lunch options, and they ask about catering.
It is a digital catastrophe because what you have just done is destroy the searchability of that digital paper trail.
You've completely broken the filing system.
Exactly. Fast forward 6 months, the finance department needs to find the specific approval for that Q3 marketing budget. They search their inbox for budget.
And they won't find it.
They will never find the final approval because it is currently buried under a subject line that says next week's lunch options. If the topic changes, you must take the 5 seconds to start a brand new email. You have to preserve the integrity of the archive.
Okay, so we've engineered the perfect, radically specific subject line. We've used our bracketed tags to reduce their cognitive load.
Yeah.
We've won the 2-second battle, and they've actually clicked open the email. But the second they open that door, the very first word they see establishes the power dynamic between you. Let's talk about the psychological landmine of the greeting.
The greeting is where you set the stage. It tells the recipient immediately how you view yourself in relation to them. And getting this wrong can instantly brand you as someone who is culturally out of touch, or worse, completely tone-deaf to the environment.
Let's walk through this formality spectrum, because it is wildly nuanced compared to how people speak in everyday life.
It really is.
At the very top, the ultra-formal, rigidly traditional end of the spectrum, we have greetings like, "Dear Mr. Last Name," or "Dear Mrs. Last Name."
Which, in the modern American corporate context, is heavily restricted.
Really restricted.
The guide is very clear that this level of formality is reserved for highly specific scenarios. Legal correspondence, formal complaints, or perhaps the very first initial contact with a senior external executive at a traditional conservative firm.
I actually laughed out loud at the visual imagery the guide used to explain why this is a bad idea for daily use.
It's so good.
They noted that using "Dear Mr. Thompson" with a daily colleague or your direct team leader is exactly like arriving at a casual Friday team lunch wearing a 3-piece suit, a pocket square, and a top hat.
It's an absurd visual, but it captures the feeling perfectly.
It really does.
It creates an incredibly awkward, almost theatrical distance between you and the recipient. And this raises a vital point about the psychology of over-formalizing. In many cultures globally, using honorifics, titles, and last names is the standard, unquestionable way to show respect to a superior or an elder.
Right.
You would never dream of calling your boss by their first name.
Right. It would be considered incredibly rude, almost insubordinate.
But in the US, the dynamic flips. If your team culture is to call the vice president Steve, and you stubbornly insist on emailing him as "Dear Mr. Thompson," you don't look respectful, you look rigid.
You look like you're trying too hard.
You look like you refuse to assimilate into the team's culture. You are intentionally creating a wall where the rest of the team is trying to build a bridge of collaboration.
So what is the default? Where is the sweet spot that doesn't put you on a top hat, but also doesn't make you sound like you're texting a buddy from college?
The American default is surprisingly casual by global standards. The sweet spot is simply, "Hi, first name." Or "Hello, first name."
And that first name convention is absolutely crucial to understand. The guide points out that first names are the standard almost everywhere in the U.S. corporate world, even when you are emailing senior leadership.
Yep.
The CEO is "Hi, Susan." The CFO is "Hi, David." The only time you revert to titles is if you are addressing very specific, heavily credentialed professions.
The protected silos.
The protected silos, I like that.
Judges are always Your Honor. Medical doctors are Dr. Smith. Military officers are addressed by their rank, like general or captain, and university professors are Professor Jones. Outside of those specific institutions, American business operates on a first-name basis.
But let's talk about the archaic traps you have to avoid, because the guide is absolutely ruthless about 2 specific phrases: "Dear Sir" or "Madam," and "To whom it may concern."
Oh, they hate those.
They basically state that these are forbidden unless you have literally exhausted every possible human avenue to find a name.
And let's be honest, in the modern era, you almost never exhaust those avenues.
Exactly. We live in an age of total information. Between LinkedIn, the company's About Us page on their website, corporate directories, and just basic Google searches, you can almost always find a human name.
It's just a matter of effort.
Using "to whom it may concern" tells the recipient something very unflattering about you. It says, I couldn't be bothered to spend 45 seconds researching who actually handles this, so I'm just firing a generic blast into the dark and making it your problem.
Right.
It signals laziness before they've even read your first sentence.
But we need to acknowledge a very real strategic dilemma here.
Yeah.
What if you are emailing an external stakeholder for the very first time?
Okay.
Say you are pitching a new vendor or reaching out to a potential partner. You don't know their internal corporate culture. You are terrified of being too casual and offending them, but you also don't want to wear the metaphorical top hat and look like a robot.
Right.
What do you do?
This is where the guide offers a truly brilliant, almost espionage-level tactical solution, the mirroring technique.
It is incredibly effective. Let's break down exactly how you execute it.
Okay, so imagine you're making a first-time contact with an executive named Maria Rodriguez.
Yeah.
You don't know her. So you start just slightly formal. You write, hello, Miss Rodriguez, or dear Miss Rodriguez.
Nice and safe.
You hit send, you send it out into the void, and then you wait and you watch exactly how she replies. If she writes back and says, hi, thanks for reaching out, we'd love to hear more, best Maria, boom. You have explicit written permission to drop the formalities. Your very next email starts with, hi, Maria. You just perfectly mirror her chosen tone.
It is a foolproof calibration tool. You protect yourself from being overly familiar and presumptuous out of the gate, but you demonstrate high emotional intelligence by immediately adapting to her comfort level.
Right.
You let the recipient dictate the terms of the relationship, and then you match their rhythm.
All right, so let's track our progress. We've nailed the radically specific subject line to reduce cognitive load.
Check.
We've successfully navigated the greeting without putting on a top hat or sounding like a generic robot. We've set the perfect tone. But now the recipient's eyes move down the screen and they are confronted with a massive, impenetrable wall of text, 4 paragraphs of dense prose.
And in a fraction of a second, all the goodwill you just built completely evaporates.
Which brings us to the core philosophy of this entire deep dive, the golden rule of the American inbox, brevity as a form of respect.
If you take absolutely nothing else away from this discussion, understand this. In the American professional ecosystem, conciseness is a commandment.
But I have to say, for a lot of people, this goes against every instinct they have about politeness.
Oh, absolutely.
I was raised to be polite.
Yeah.
I was taught to ask people how they're doing, to provide context, to soften my requests. The cultural contrast here is so stark.
It's a huge shift.
The guide notes that in many parts of Europe, the Middle East, Latin America, and Asia, if you are writing to a superior or a client, elaborateness is the entire point.
Right. You need an extensive preamble. You need to say, I hope this email finds you well and that your family is thriving and that your recent travels were safe.
Yeah.
You provide incredibly detailed context because detail signals thoroughness. Detail equals respect.
And that is a beautiful relationship-centric way of communicating. But in the hyper-fast, highly transactional American corporate environment, that exact same elaborate email signals something entirely different.
It signals inefficiency.
Right. It signals that you don't know how to get to the point.
Yes. The defining philosophy is respect through brevity. Because if we go back to that triage medic, if the average person is getting 120 to 200 emails a day, stealing their time with unnecessary words is almost viewed as a hostile act.
Wow, a hostile act.
You are taking their most precious resource, time.
This is a profound shift in mindset for many professionals, especially those moving into American corporate culture from abroad or moving from academia into business, to realize that giving someone less to read is actually the ultimate professional courtesy.
Yes.
You are giving them the gift of time.
So how do we actually execute this without sounding like sociopaths? How do we strip away the elaborateness while still getting our point across?
Right.
The guide breaks down what they call the 3-part email framework, and we need to dissect this because it is highly actionable.
It is a structural masterpiece. Every routine email should be built on this chassis, 3 parts: context, request, next step.
Let's pull apart the first piece. Context. The strict rule here is 1 to 2 sentences, maximum. You provide only the absolute essential background required for them to understand what they are looking at. no throat clearing.
I love that term, throat clearing.
It's so descriptive.
It's all that linguistic fluff you do before you actually start saying the important thing. You skip all the warm-up stretches and just state exactly why you are in their inbox.
Then we move to part 2. The request. This is the heart of the dart. 1 to 3 sentences. It must be explicit and it must be direct. You never, ever bury the ask.
Burying the ask is the worst.
In American business culture, ambiguity is the enemy of action. If you need a budget approved, ask for the budget to be approved. If you need them to review a slide deck, ask them to review the slide deck.
Yeah.
Do not hint at it, do not dance around it, and do not hope they figure it out through context clues.
And finally, part 3. Next step. 1 to 2 sentences, setting clear deadlines and accountability. Who is doing what and by when? What happens next in the timeline?
To really grasp how powerful this framework is, we have to look at the illustrative examples provided in the guide, the Meridian Core examples.
Right.
They compare 2 emails written by 2 different people trying to accomplish the exact same goal, getting a manager to review a proposal document.
Let's look at the masterpiece first, the concise version. It is an incredibly aerodynamic dart. It goes like this. Subject. Action required in brackets. Client proposal for Meridian Core review needed by Wednesday.
Great subject line.
Then the body. Hi, Sarah. I've finalized the proposal for the Meridian Core project based on the scope we discussed in last week's planning meeting.
Let's freeze it right there. That is the context. 1 single sentence. It anchors Sarah perfectly. She knows the client, she knows the document, and she remembers the meeting. 0 throat clearing.
Right. Then it moves straight into the request. Could you review the attached document and let me know if you have any revisions or feedback? I'd like to send it to the client by end of day Thursday.
That is the request. Crystal clear. She knows exactly what labor is required of her review and provide feedback, and she knows the broader timeline. It goes to the client Thursday.
And then the wrap-up. I'm available for a quick chat tomorrow afternoon if you'd prefer to discuss any changes in person. Thanks so much, Emma.
And that is the next step. And notice how Emma brilliantly combines it with a flexible offer to shift mediums. She knows that some managers hate typing out long feedback, so she offers a verbal alternative.
So smart.
The whole thing takes Sarah maybe 15 seconds to process. Emma respects Sarah's time, and Sarah will likely approve the document quickly.
Okay, now we have to look at the alternative example. The disaster. The 4-paragraph version written by someone who has not mastered American brevity. I won't read the whole thing because we literally don't have time, but listen to this agonizing preamble. Dear Miss Sarah Johnson, I hope this email finds you well and that you had a pleasant weekend. I wanted to reach out to you regarding the project proposal that we've been working on for the past several weeks pertaining to our client.
It's exhausting just listening to it out loud. You can feel the recipient's patience draining.
And it goes on. It recounts the entire history of the project. It summarizes a meeting they both already attended. It is filled with deeply obsequious language.
Obsequious, meaning excessively eager to please, overly deferential, almost fawning. It signals low confidence.
Exactly. But there is a very specific phrase in this bad example that I want to tear into.
Yeah.
Because I see it all the time, and it drives me absolutely insane.
Let's hear it.
The sender writes, I would be most grateful if you could kindly find some time in your undoubtedly busy schedule to review the attached document at your earliest convenience.
Ah, yes. The infamous at your earliest convenience.
I have to say, I think this phrase is a massive trap, and frankly, I think it's cowardly.
Strong words.
I mean it. I understand why people use it. It sounds so polite. It sounds incredibly deferential to the manager's authority. But let's be honest about what happens in the real world of American business. At your earliest convenience actually translates to whenever you get around to it, which might be never.
That is precisely the failure of the phrase. You are abdicating responsibility for the timeline.
It completely undermines the entire purpose of the email. If I tell a manager to do something at their convenience, and they are drowning in 200 emails, my email is going straight to the absolute bottom of the pile.
Right.
It will be ignored until it becomes a massive crisis.
Yeah.
Why would they prioritize something that has no deadline?
What you're highlighting is the profound tension between traditional politeness and operational clarity. The sender thinks they're being respectful by not demanding a specific timeline from their superior, but they're actually creating a massive problem for the manager.
How so?
A busy executive needs you to tell them when you need the work. Saying, review needed by Wednesday isn't bossy. It is a vital piece of data that allows them to triage effectively.
Oh, back to triage.
Exactly. When you say at your convenience, you are forcing the manager to guess how urgent it is. You are increasing their cognitive load.
Okay, so we've stripped out the fluff. We've written our crisp, aerodynamic three-part email. The context is tight, the request is explicit, the next step is defined.
Beautiful.
Now, the stakes raise exponentially because you have a weaponized email and you have to decide who actually gets to see it.
Welcome to the politics of visibility, the CC and BCC dynamics.
This is where the inbox truly becomes an arena for workplace politics. Let's start with CC, the carbon copy. On its face, it seems so harmless. You just want to keep people in the loop.
But the foundational rule of CC is that it is strictly for awareness, not action. If someone's name is in the to field, they are expected to perform a task or reply. If their name is in the CC field, they are merely an observer in the gallery.
But the cardinal sin here, according to our guide, is indiscriminate CCing. Just throwing everyone and their manager onto the thread just in case. Why do people do this so often?
It is an incredibly common defensive mechanism. People operate from a place of fear. They think, if I CC my boss, their boss, the project manager, and the legal team, no one can ever come back later and claim they didn't know what was happening.
I'm covering my tracks.
Exactly. But the reality is defensive CCing creates massive structural inbox clutter for the entire organization. And worse, for you personally, it trains people to ignore you.
It's the boy who cried wolf, but with notifications.
That's exactly it. If I am CC'd on 50 of your emails every single week, and 49 of them require absolutely no action or input from me, my brain will eventually categorize your name as spam.
Wow.
I will stop reading the 50th email, which might actually be important. You dilute your own authority.
So the rule of thumb the guide offers is beautifully simple. Only CC if the person genuinely, absolutely needs the information to do their job. And they suggest a great micro-habit to pair with this. Always acknowledge the CC'd person in the body of the email. So you write your message, and at the bottom you add, I've CC'd Michael from legal, as this contract amendment might affect his current review.
That eliminates the mystery. When Michael opens the email, he doesn't have to spend 5 minutes scrolling through a long thread trying to figure out why he was summoned.
Right.
You've clearly defined his role as an observer for legal context. It is highly efficient.
Now here is where it gets into truly Machiavellian territory, the power dynamics of the CC field. Because I have a confession.
Okay.
I have seen people use the CC field as a threat. If a colleague is ignoring their requests, they just casually drop that colleague's manager into the CC field on the third request. It is a highly loaded strategic move.
It is the digital equivalent of calling the principal into the playground to break up a fight. You are instantly elevating the stakes of the conversation.
It works, though. People reply incredibly fast when their boss is suddenly watching.
It works in the short term, yes. It can be a legitimate escalation tactic if a vital project is completely stalled, but it is also a deeply passive-aggressive accountability maneuver.
Yeah.
If you ask me for a report and I reply late, but I CC your boss, I am basically waving a flag that says, I want leadership to know that you are the bottleneck here, not me.
But the guide warns that doing this carries a heavy cost, right?
You are absolutely burning political capital when you do that. You think you're getting things done efficiently, but to leadership, you're signaling something very negative about yourself.
What are you signaling?
If you have to bring management into every minor disagreement or delay, leadership will eventually view you as someone who lacks the soft skills to manage peer-to-peer relationships independently. You become the high-maintenance employee.
That makes sense.
Use the manager CC option sparingly, like a nuclear deterrent.
Okay, so if CC is playing politics out in the open on the main stage, BCC blind carbon copy is the covert operative creeping through the shadows.
The shadows of the inbox. BCC is inherently secretive.
Let's talk about the legitimate non-creepy uses first, before we get into the scandalous stuff.
Good idea.
The guide highlights 2 perfectly safe, professional ways to use BCC. First, mass communications. If you are emailing a newsletter to 100 external clients, you put their addresses in BCC to protect their privacy so they don't all see each other's contact info. That's just data security.
Right.
Second, politely moving someone off a thread.
The BCC exit. If you and I are on a thread with David and David introduces us and his part is done, I will reply to you and say, thanks for the intro, David, moving David to BCC to spare his inbox.
Nice.
Host, let's set up a time to chat. David gets that one email, he knows he is formally released from the conversation, and he doesn't have to suffer through the next 30 back and forth replies about scheduling. It's a high-level professional courtesy.
But then there is the gray area, the dark art. Secretly BCCing your manager on a difficult, contentious exchange with a colleague, so your manager can watch you win the argument without the colleague knowing they are being observed.
Yeah.
I have to express genuine dread about this function. To me, BCCing your boss on a sensitive email thread feels exactly like wearing a hidden wire to a mafia meeting. It feels deeply unethical.
It is a very high-stakes espionage maneuver, and it is fraught with danger.
I have to ask you, as someone who studies these dynamics, is the risk ever worth it? Because all it takes is one tiny slip.
Just one.
You BCC your manager. Your manager reads the email on their phone, isn't paying close attention, and accidentally hits reply all with a comment like, "Good job handling this."
Oh, no.
Suddenly, your secret BCC is exposed to the colleague. They know you were secretly funneling the conversation to leadership behind their back. The trust is instantly, permanently destroyed. You look like a snake.
The guide is extremely cautious about this exact scenario, and I completely agree with their assessment. The risk of the accidental reply-all exposure is far too high, and the ethical murkiness makes it a dubious choice for a professional. You never want to be caught spying, but the guide suggests a safer, far more professional alternative that achieves the exact same result without the risk.
Walk us through the alternative. How do you loop the boss in safely?
You utilize the forward function. You have the difficult, contentious exchange with your colleague. You keep it entirely between the two of you in the to field. You maintain the trust of a private conversation.
Okay.
Then, after the fact, you go to your sent folder, you forward that specific email directly to your manager, and you add a brief framing note. "Hi, Sarah. Wanted to privately flag this exchange with David for your awareness. I'm handling the situation, but I wanted you to have visibility in case he brings it up in your one-on-one."
Oh, that is so much cleaner.
Yeah.
It feels like taking your boss into a private conference room to brief them, rather than hiding them in the closet while you talk to your colleague.
Precisely. It achieves the exact same goal. Your manager sees the interaction and knows you are handling it. But it completely removes the technological risk of the reply-all bomb. And psychologically, it frames you as a proactive communicator offering a briefing rather than a tattletale setting a secret trap.
That is a phenomenal piece of advice. Forward, don't BCC. Okay, so you've sent the perfectly crafted, brilliantly brief email. You've navigated the CC and BCC minefields like a diplomat. You hit send, and then you enter the void.
The worst part.
The waiting game begins. Let's explore the anxiety of silence, response times, and the dark art of the follow-up.
The moment you hit send, the clock starts ticking in your head.
It does. You send it, and now you wait. And the anxiety starts almost immediately. How long is too long to wait? Did they get it? Are they ignoring me? Am I being fired?
We've all been there.
How do you break the silence without sounding desperate or angry?
To manage that anxiety, the guide provides some excellent concrete baselines for timing norms in the American workplace. It sets the ground rules.
Oh yeah, what are they?
For internal peers within your organization, people on your level or in other departments 24 hours is the standard expectation for a reply. For clients or external stakeholders who pay you money, the expectations tighten dramatically to same-day responses, often within a 2 to 4 hour window. And for genuine urgencies, obviously, it's ASAP.
But let me present a very common scenario. What if you get an email from a major client at 10 a.m. and they are asking a complex question that requires you to pull data from 3 different departments?
Yeah, that happens a lot.
You can't possibly answer it in 2 hours. You are stuck between needing a full day to do good, accurate work and the intense pressure to respond immediately so they don't think you're ignoring them. What do you do?
This is exactly where the guide introduces one of the most critical, trust-building professional tools you can possess, the holding response.
The holding response. Tell me how this works in practice.
It is a 30-second email that entirely eliminates the sender's anxiety. You don't do the work yet. You simply reply within that 2-hour window and say, "Hi, Mark, received this. I need to pull some data from the finance team to give you a thorough and accurate answer, so I will get back to you with a full review by Thursday afternoon."
It's brilliant. Because the sender's anxiety usually isn't, why haven't they done the 4 hours of labor yet? Their anxiety is entirely based in the unknown.
Exactly.
Did my email go to their spam folder? Did they even see it? Did they quit? Are they ignoring me? A holding response removes the terrifying void.
Exactly. It establishes you as hyper-reliable and communicative without forcing you to rush your actual deep work. You buy yourself the time you need by simply acknowledging receipt.
But let's flip the scenario around. You are the sender. You did not get a holding response. You got absolute silence.
Yeah.
Days have passed. Now we enter the incredibly delicate territory of the follow-up email.
It truly is an art form, balancing persistence with diplomacy.
The guide gives us the mechanical wait times. Wait 3 to 5 days before following up on routine matters, and 48 hours for time-sensitive stuff. But the timing isn't the hard part. It's the tone.
The tone is everything.
You have to be persistent. You need your answer. But the goal is to give the person a face-saving exit.
Right. You must assume positive intent, even if you suspect they're just being lazy. You have to write the follow-up email under the polite fiction that they're simply overwhelmed by their own importance, not maliciously ignoring you.
Let's analyze the masterclass follow-up phrase from the text, because it's pure gold. Imagine you've waited 4 days for a document. You reply to the thread and write, I know things have been incredibly busy on your end, so I completely understand if this slipped through the cracks.
Slipped through the cracks. It is a magical idiom.
I want to spend a minute praising this specific phrase. It is a brilliant diplomatic buffer. Think about what it achieves.
It does a lot of heavy lifting.
It really does. It allows you to hold someone strictly accountable. You are reminding them that they owe you a deliverable, while essentially saying to them, I know you're not ignoring me on purpose. You're just very important, very busy, and overwhelmed. You are giving them an out.
Yeah.
You are protecting their ego from the accusation of incompetence.
It is a beautiful piece of corporate diplomacy. Put yourself in the shoes of the person who forgot to reply. When they see that email, they don't have to be defensive. They don't have to make up a lie about their dog eating their laptop.
Right.
They can just latch onto the lifeline you threw them and apply, yes, exactly. I've been absolutely swamped this week. I'm so sorry. Here is the document. You get what you need, and you've preserved the working relationship without making them feel attacked.
But what if they ignore the diplomatic buffer? What if you send the slip through the cracks email and it's crickets again? Another 3 days go by.
Do you just keep making excuses for them?
No, absolutely not. At that point, the grace period is over. We move to escalation.
Okay, gloves come off. The guide outlines that for a second follow-up, the tone must fundamentally shift. You drop the soft slip through the cracks language entirely. You state the impending deadline clearly. But the most powerful tactical move here is asserting your own professional agency.
Right. The text uses the example, if I don't hear back by noon tomorrow, I can move forward with the current version of the deck.
This is an incredibly effective maneuver. You aren't begging for their attention anymore. You are telling the recipient, I am not going to let your silence stall my progress or make me miss my deadline. I am taking control of the process, and you are officially losing your chance to have input.
Wow.
It is amazing how quickly a silent colleague will reply when they realize a project is moving forward without their fingerprints on it.
It's the ultimate polite ultimatum. Okay, so dealing with silence is stressful and requires a lot of emotional intelligence. But let's move to something that makes the anxiety of silence look like a relaxing vacation on a beach.
Oh boy.
What happens when you respond too fast and you push the wrong button? Let's talk about digital catastrophes and housekeeping.
We are entering the realm of the workplace nightmare.
The accidental reply all.
It is a visceral, stomach-dropping fear for anyone who has ever worked in a corporate office.
We've all heard the legends or witnessed it firsthand. The guide paints the classic, terrifying picture. HR sends a company-wide email to all 5,000 employees about a mundane new policy regarding the refrigerator in the break room.
Classic setup.
You want to make a private, snarky, cynical comment to your work best friend about how stupid the policy is. You think you hit forward. You type out a highly sarcastic joke. You hit send. And then your eyes flick up to the to-line.
And your heart stops.
The blood completely drains from your face. You realize you didn't hit forward. You hit reply all. You just broadcasted your sarcastic insubordination to all 5,000 employees, including the CEO and the head of HR.
It is a catastrophic muscle memory failure. Your brain moves faster than your fingers, and your career is suddenly on the line.
How do we mitigate this? Because clearly humans are fallible. We are going to make mistakes.
The technological mitigation is absolutely essential, and everyone listening should do this immediately. You must set up the undo send feature on your email client, whether it's Gmail or Outlook.
Yes.
Most platforms allow you to set a 15 to 30-second delay before the email actually leaves the server. That 30-second buffer is the difference between a minor gasping heart attack and having to pack up your desk in a cardboard box.
And behaviorally, the rule the guide sets is ironclad. Never forward or reply to a mass email to make a joke. Just do not do it.
Never.
Start a brand new, sterile email to your friend. Break the physical, digital link to the dangerous mass thread entirely. It's like handling radioactive material. Keep it in a separate container.
But if the worst happens, if you do blast the entire company with a mistake, the advice from the guide is counterintuitive but deeply wise. Do not send a follow-up reply all apologizing for the first reply all.
Really, my immediate panicked instinct would be to email everyone shouting, "I'm so sorry, please ignore my last email. Technical glitch."
Think back to the concept of cognitive load we discussed with subject lines. You just sent a useless, distracting mistake to 5,000 people. If you send a panicked apology, you are sending a second useless email to 5,000 people.
Oh, that makes sense.
You are generating another wave of pinging notifications, interrupting their workflows again, and ironically drawing even more attention to your original mistake.
Right.
Unless the content was genuinely offensive, discriminatory, or legally problematic, in which case you need to call HR immediately. The best strategy for a minor gaffe is to suffer in silence and let it fade. People will cringe, they will laugh at you for 5 minutes, and then they will move on.
Suffer in silence. Good to know. While we are on the topic of mistakes, let's run through some of the rapid-fire etiquette and housekeeping rules the guide brings up, because these are the little micro habits that slowly build or erode your professional reputation.
Let's do it.
First up, attachments.
The rule is simple. Always attach the document before you type a single word of the email.
Yes. If I had $1 for every, here's the attachment follow-up email I've sent in my life, I could retire to a private island. By attaching it first, you eliminate the possibility of forgetting it.
Exactly.
Second point, proofreading names religiously.
This is a massive relationship-damaging pet peeve for many people. If someone's name is Catherine with a K, and you reply and spell it Catherine with a Y, you are signaling deep, disrespectful carelessness.
It's so rude.
As the guide points out, you literally have their email signature at the bottom of the screen. You have LinkedIn. Getting someone's name wrong when it is right in front of you shows a fundamental lack of attention to detail. It whispers to them, you aren't important enough for me to look closely.
Third, thread management. This is what I call the 6 email rule.
Yeah.
If an email thread goes back and forth 6 times between you and a colleague, what about this layout? No, try this color. Well, what if we move the logo? I don't think that works. So stop typing. Take your hands off the keyboard. Pick up the phone or walk over to their desk. You are burning daylight and creating massive misunderstandings on something that could be resolved in a dynamic 3-minute verbal conversation.
At that point, the medium of email is no longer fitting the complexity of the message. You have to recognize when a tool is failing you.
And finally, out-of-office messages. The rule is, be organized. Give specific dates. Provide an alternate contact for emergencies. Don't just set it to say, I'm away, and leave people hanging in a void, wondering who is handling your accounts.
Now, before we move on from catastrophes, we need to pause and address the most sobering, chilling analysis from this entire section of the guide. We need to talk about the underlying reality of all digital communication.
The permanence of email.
Yes. This is something we intellectually know, but behaviorally forget. Unlike a verbal chat in the hallway or a whispered conversation in the break room, emails are immortal.
Immortal.
They are instantly searchable, they are infinitely forwardable, and most importantly, they are stored on corporate servers that you do not own and do not control.
It is a terrifying irony to think about. A quick, frustrated message that you type out in 5 seconds of anger because you haven't had your morning coffee can literally outlast your entire 10-year career at a company. It lives forever in a server farm somewhere.
The ultimate filter the guide provides for this reality is brilliant in its severity. Before you send an angry email, ask yourself, would I be perfectly comfortable if this exact email appeared on a large projector screen during a legal deposition?
Wow. Let that sink in.
Picture a sterile legal boardroom. A lawyer is blowing up your rushed, snarky email from 2018 to 10 feet tall on a projector, and they are asking you to explain under oath exactly what you meant by the word whatever.
That is horrifying.
If that visual makes you sweat, or if it makes your heart rate spike, delete the draft immediately. Walk away from the computer.
That is the best, most terrifying filter I have ever heard. Okay, assuming you haven't destroyed your career with a reply all and you've passed the deposition test, there's one final, incredibly nuanced layer to master before hitting send. We've talked about the mechanics, now we talk about the music.
The music.
The invisible soundtrack, tone markers, and sign-offs.
This is where we get into the subtle micro-expressions of digital communication. This is how you convey your humanity.
Exactly. Assuming your words are perfectly chosen and beautifully brief, what is the lingering emotional flavor you are leaving behind? Because, as we established in the intro, your vocal warmth, your smile, and your body language are completely absent.
And this absence brings us to one of the most fascinating linguistic evolutions in modern workplace culture, the exclamation point.
I was absolutely fascinated by this section. The exclamation point is no longer just a grammatical tool to indicate volume or excitement. It has evolved into an essential social lubricant.
It functions as a tone marker. In a professional email, if you write thanks with a hard period at the end, it can easily read as cold, curt, abrupt, or even passively angry. It's like closing a door loudly.
Right.
But if you write thanks with an exclamation point, it reads as genuinely appreciative, collaborative, and friendly.
It's incredible to think about. The exclamation point isn't shouting anymore, it's smiling. We have completely repurposed a standard grammatical symbol to replace human facial expressions on a screen.
That is exactly what has happened linguistically. But there is a very intense, deeply ingrained sociological nuance here that the guide highlights, and we absolutely must discuss it because it affects millions of professionals.
Yes, let's get into this.
The pressure to use these exclamation points to simulate warmth and friendliness does not fall equally on everyone in the workplace.
Right. The guide points out the immense sociological pressure, particularly on women in American workplaces, to constantly use exclamation points and emojis to appear approachable and non-threatening.
The data on this is striking. If a male executive sends a brief, purely factual email that says, "Please review this report by Friday," it is typically read as decisive, authoritative, and focused. He is just being a boss. But if a female executive sends the exact same sentence, word for word, "Please review this report by Friday," sociological studies show she is statistically much more likely to be perceived by both male and female recipients as cold, aggressive, bossy, or angry.
Which is completely unfair.
To combat that unconscious bias, women are forced to constantly perform emotional labor, softening their emails with exclamation points, warm greetings, and extra fluff just to be perceived as neutral.
It's exhausting just thinking about having to constantly manage that double standard.
Yeah.
You have to do the job, and then you have to manage everyone's emotional reaction to you doing the job.
Exactly.
And that leads directly into the next linguistic technique the guide mentions. Softeners.
Yes, using specific words as hedges to lower the stakes of a request and protect the recipient's ego.
Right. Instead of sending the direct command, "send me the data," which feels aggressive, you use a softener and write, "Would it be possible to send me the data?" You phrase it as a question.
Or utilizing the word just as a linguistic shock absorber. "I'm just checking in on that report. I just wanted to flag this issue."
It cushions the blow. But the guide offers a very critical caveat regarding the word just. While it effectively softens a request, chronic overuse of just can actively undermine your professional authority.
That's a danger.
If you are a project manager, you shouldn't be saying, "I'm just checking in." You are the manager. Checking in is your job. Overusing just makes you sound apologetic for simply existing and doing your job.
It's an incredible high-wire act.
Which brings us to a point where I need you, as the expert, to synthesize a massive contradiction for us. Because on one hand, when we talked about the golden rule, we learned that brevity is respect.
Right.
Be concise, cut the fluff, skip the throat clearing. But here, in the final section, we are learning that we desperately need tone-softening words, hedges, and exclamation points so we don't trigger people's insecurities or sound like angry robots. How on earth do you balance the strict demand for ruthless brevity with the desperate psychological need for tone softening?
That is the central paradox of American email culture. You are being asked to be ruthlessly efficient, but also warmly relatable at the exact same time. The solution is strategic placement.
Okay, how does that look?
You maintain your brevity in the core structure. The context, request, and next step remain short, factual, and unadorned. You inject the warmth into the margins, the greeting and the sign-off.
Ah, I see.
You use your exclamation point on the "Hi, Sarah," and the "Thanks so much," allowing the middle of the email to be purely operational and fast. You smile at the door, you do the business quickly, and you smile on the way out.
That is so smart.
It is a delicate balance, but mastering that specific rhythm is what separates a competent communicator from an exceptional, highly influential one.
Speaking of smiling on the way out, let's decode the final piece of the puzzle, The sign-offs, the lingering flavor you leave at the absolute bottom of the page.
The sign-off is your final impression.
Hmm.
It sets the tone for the next interaction.
The guide decodes several of these, and it's fascinating to see them categorized. They call BEST the safe, neutral Swiss Army knife of sign-offs.
Yes, BEST is very safe.
It's the beige paint of corporate communication. It doesn't offend anyone, it matches every room, but it also strips out any unique personality. You can use it anywhere.
It is entirely unimpeachable. You will never get fired for signing an email BEST.
Thanks is warm and obviously great when you've just made a request. Regards is formal, maybe slightly distant, feels a bit cold.
Bit stiff, yeah.
Cheers is tricky. The guide notes it can seem a bit affected or pretentious in the US, like you're pretending to be British, unless it's genuinely part of your specific startup or company's culture. Warmly is highly relational, often found in creative fields, nonprofits, or therapy.
And then there are the ones you must strictly avoid. Respectfully is far too military or stiff for a standard civilian office. Yours truly is completely archaic, like you're writing a love letter with a quill pen in the 1800s.
And my personal favorite to avoid, which people leave on by mistake all the time, sent from my iPhone.
Oh, yes.
Leaving the default sent from my iPhone signature on important professional messages, it implies a total lack of effort.
It really does.
It secretly says to the recipient, I typed this with my thumbs while waiting for a coffee at Starbucks. I didn't proofread it. So excuse any typos, and you aren't important enough for me to sit down at a real keyboard.
Yeah.
It is absolutely not the vibe you want when sending a major pitch to a new client.
Absolutely not. It undermines the professionalism of everything written above it.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. Let's recap and apply this. Because when you step back and look at the entire landscape, the sheer amount of mental strategy, sociological awareness, and empathy that goes into this supposedly mundane task of sending a simple email is staggering.
It is not a simple task. It requires applied sociology, psychology, linguistic precision, and political maneuvering, all executed in a matter of seconds.
Our guide gave some actionable homework, and I want to pass it directly on to you, the listener. First, tomorrow morning, audit your last 10 sent emails against the 3-part framework. Look for context, request, next step. Are you throat clearing? Are you burying the ask?
Good exercise.
Second, practice writing a face-saving follow-up. Try using the slip through the cracks buffer and see how people respond. Third, evaluate your default sign-off. Are you a BEST or a warmly? Is it serving your brand? And finally, have a trusted peer audit your tone. Ask a colleague, does this sound too aggressive, or am I overusing the word just?
Getting an external, objective perspective on your personal emotional register is invaluable. You cannot hear your own tone.
We really want to emphasize to you that the next time you open your inbox, you aren't just processing administrative data. You are actively managing your reputation. You are performing your professionalism. You are building or damaging critical relationships to a highly specific, highly rigorous cultural rulebook.
Knowledge is most valuable when it is understood and applied. Recognizing these invisible rules gives you an immense strategic advantage over everyone who is just blindly typing.
But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. Something that goes beyond the immediate guide we read today, but builds right on top of its core premise. We just spent an hour dissecting how American email relies so heavily on unwritten, fundamentally human cultural cues.
Right.
We actively add exclamation points to simulate a human smile. We strategically use the word just to soften a blow and protect a colleague's fragile ego. We craft delicate holding responses to soothe someone's very human anxiety of being ignored.
Everything we discussed is based on deeply human neuroses. The fear of being bossy, the fear of being ignored, the need for respect.
Exactly. So what happens to this entire landscape of workplace culture as artificial intelligence tools increasingly step in to draft our emails for us?
Yeah.
If you simply click a button that says generate professional reply, what does the AI actually do?
That's a great question.
Will a perfectly professional AI strip away all of our individual human quirks, removing the exclamation points, the apologies, and the hedges, effectively making us all sound like cold, distant, hyper-efficient executives?
That would entirely change the emotional temperature of the workplace. It would make everything ruthlessly transactional.
Or will the AI learn to perfectly mimic our cultural neuroses? Will the algorithm learn to proactively insert exclamation points, artificially apologize for interrupting, and deploy diplomatic buffers like slip through the cracks exactly where we would, completely faking our human empathy?
Will the machine learn to simulate our anxiety and our politeness? That raises a profound question about authenticity in the future of communication. If a perfectly empathetic email is written by a machine, does the empathy still count?
It really does. Will we even be able to tell who is human anymore? It's something to ponder before you hit generate reply tomorrow morning. Because at the end of the day, you can have all the automated assistants in the world to help you operate the machinery of the car.
But if you don't understand what the road signs mean and why they were put there in the first place, you are still driving blind in a foreign country. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.